Whoa, buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Dukes Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
This is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fighting, this is for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday, your chance to sound off on issues of a 2A nature right here on the Michael Dukes Show. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. It is that most beautiful day of the week where we get a chance to talk about firearms, gun rights, laws, statistics, facts, stacks, stacks of waxing, whatever. Anyway, good morning and welcome to the program. Big day for us today here. Joining us on the program in just a moment is going to be Dr. John Lott, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, who's going to come on board and talk with us about some of his latest analysis of the facts, as we were just talking about, the statistics, the actual numbers, both of violent crime numbers, of the CDC's lack of numbers, the National Violence, the victimization study, crime victim study, and of course, even discussions on how some of these numbers are being hidden by various federal agencies, and we'll discuss that with Dr. John Lott here in just a second. In hour 2 of the program, we're going to take some calls and go over some of the other headlines that are going on around the country, and then, of course, at the end of the show, as always, we're going to be joined by Willie Waffle for our weekend movie review. We always got to end it on a little bit of a lighter note because we get into some good and heavy stuff on Fridays. So I guess without further ado, let's just jump right into this. Dr. Lott is waiting in the wings, and he's a busy man. So let's get on board with him and see what he has to say as he joins us this morning. Dr. John Lott, again, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, the man with the best view of all my guests in the world out there. Good morning, Dr. Lott. How are you, my friend?
Doing great. How about yourself?
You know, I'm not doing too bad. It's Friday, and it's always a good day for us. So happy to have you on board. Dr. Lott, a couple things. You've been doing some really good work here over the last few weeks, and we've wanted to have you on the program. And but you're a busy guy, so I appreciate you taking the time out to talk with us. Let's get started a little bit because you and I had a brief discussion about this here a little while ago, but the numbers continue to come out, and you continue to have to try and battle a lot of the mainstream narrative on the National Crime Victimization Study numbers, which is a voluntary study where people, I guess, submit their information to the FBI and law enforcement, and they're using these numbers to track things specifically about violent crime and other things. Also, good guy with a gun, defensive gun use stats and things like that. Let's talk a little bit about this victimization study and some of the problems that you're seeing with this idea of self-reporting and the numbers and the narrative that seems to be coming out. You have a piece over on the CPRC, Crime Prevention Research Center website at crimesearch.org.
Crime Research.
.org. And you kind of break some of this narrative down for us. Could you walk us through this, please?
Yeah, sure. So the media over the last couple of years has been having one news article after another with headlines that say crime is down, but people erroneously or mistakenly believe that it's increasing. And over the last week, it's really gone into hyperdrive as a new FBI data report has come out. Originally, the FBI had claimed that violent crime was down by 2.1% in 2022. And now they're claiming it's down by 3% in 2023. The media has ignored that even the FBI has gone back and redone its numbers for 2022, saying that rather than a 2.1 drop, they now say it increased by 4.5%, which is larger than the drop that we've had in 2023. But the media just cracks me up. They just refuse to even report, even if you want to use the FBI data, and we'll go through the problems with that. It just cracks me up that they can't even go and report that the earlier numbers that they were relying on for a year were, even the FBI says, were wrong. But look, people have known for many decades that most crimes aren't reported to police, that about 40% of violent crimes aren't reported, that only about 40% of violent crimes are reported, and only about 30% of property crimes are reported. And so 51 years ago, the Department of Justice set up something called the National Crime Victimization Survey in order to get a handle on what was happening with total crime. It's a truly massive survey. They survey 240,000 people a year. And, if you're going to go and ask people, do you care about what's happening to reported crime, or are you primarily concerned about what's happening to total crime? My guess is most people would say I'm most concerned about what's happening to total crime rather than the crimes that are reported. And the National Crime Victimization Survey figures out both reported and unreported, as well as total crime. And you look at the Biden administration, the years, the FBI claims that reported crime has fallen by about 5 percentage points. The National Crime Victimization data shows that violent crime increased by 55%, rapes by 42%, robberies by 63%, and aggravated assaults by 55%. Those are startling different numbers there. And there are lots of reasons for it. One of the reasons for it is that law enforcement, particularly in large cities in the United States, has collapsed. In the 5 years before COVID, the average arrest rate for violent crimes was about 44%. It's fallen to about 20%. It's never been that low, never been even remotely close to being that low in the past. And one thing we've known for a long time is that the rate that people report crimes to the police depends in part on whether they think the criminals are going to be caught and punished. There are other things that are going on. Even if you just want to compare the FBI's measure of reported crime to the National Crime Victimization Survey's measure of reported crime, the two are not in sync at all. In 2022, as I mentioned originally, the FBI said that reported crime fell by 2.1%. They've since upgraded it to an increase of 4.5%, a gap of 6.6 percentage points. But if you compare it to the National Crime Victimization data, the National Crime Victimization data showed a 29% increase in 2022. In 2023, while the FBI shows, at least for now, maybe after the election, they'll increase it again, a 3% drop in reported violent crime. The National Crime Victimization data showed a 4.5% increase in reported crime. And so that raises a question. I mean, it's one thing to go and say that total crime differs from reported crime, but to have the two measures of reported crime going in such dramatically different directions raises some real questions. And there's a couple things to point out. One is a lot of police departments aren't reporting crime data to the FBI starting in 2021 when the Biden administration changed the reporting requirements. In 2022, 31% of police departments stopped reporting any crime data to the FBI, and another 24% only partially reported crime data to the FBI. So that means fewer than half of police departments were reporting complete crime data to the FBI. That's a huge change.
Right.
It looks like a huge percent have continued to not report in 2023, though we don't have complete numbers on that yet. And so that's one thing. But there's a second thing that I think is important. And that is, I think most people believe that simply calling up 911 counts as reporting a crime to the police. And it doesn't as far as the FBI is concerned. You actually have to have a police report filled out. And that's not done through the 911 operator. And so what happens is that you, in many parts of the country now, you call up 911, the operator will ask you if it's an emergency. And if you say, basically what they're asking is the criminal there right now committing the crime? And if the answer is no, they'll say, well, you can come down to the police station and wait in line and fill out a police report. But, and they may even add that there's not much chance that something's going to be done about it. But that wasn't true a few years ago. A few years ago, if you called up, they would send out a police car to you to go and take the report. Well, if you make it more difficult, more time consuming for somebody to go and report a crime, you're going to have some people who are going to say it's just not worth it. I'm not going to take the effort to go and report it right now.
Right.
And so what happens is when the National Crime Victimization data is put together, they call up the people, visit in their homes, and they go through, they ask somebody whether they've been a victim of a crime or whether somebody in the family has. And then they'll go and ask about 40 different questions about when it occurred, where it occurred, what it involved, characteristics of the criminal, what the outcome was. And then they'll ask you whether you reported the crime. And I believe people think that, well, I called up 911, that was reporting the crime. And so while the FBI data doesn't count it as a reported crime because no police report was filled out in some of those cases, it's still counted in the National Crime Victimization data.
This creates a couple problems. I mean, first and foremost, I think the biggest problem is that you can't make good decisions without solid logical data and data that's been backed up. So how can we even make good decisions on, crime bills, differences in procedures and things like that if we don't have the proper information? And I guess the second question then becomes, why are the two sets of data so wildly different? Is it just a mistake or is it intentional?
Well, I mean, I think I was just trying to explain why they're different from each other.
Right.
The FBI data, they changed the reporting requirements. I mean, that's something that was consciously done. I don't think they hoped that there was going to be such a large percentage of police departments that weren't going to be reporting the data. They've loosened up the reporting requirements a little bit after they saw the huge percentage of police departments that had stopped reporting data. But look, you ask if this consciousness, I think it's conscious with regard to the media for darn sure. So David Muir, during the presidential debate, after Trump mentioned that crime had been increasing, David Muir fact checks Trump and says, well, the FBI shows that violent crime has gone down. By the way, he was using the numbers for 2022, which now the FBI disowns, just as an aside that's there. But on top of that, you have a situation where 2 days after the presidential debate, the Bureau of Justice Statistics and the Department of Justice puts out the National Crime Victimization data showing this huge increase in violent crime during the Biden administration. Trump, that's what Trump was referring to, the increase in violent crime during the Biden administration.
Right.
And I mean, there's never been over any 3-year period that the Bureau of Justice Statistics has put this data together to have as large of a percentage increase as we've had during the Biden administration. The next largest increase occurred in 2006 over a 3-year period, and it was a 27 percentage point increase. So this is more than twice, slightly more than twice the increase in the next largest increase in violent crime that we've had. So that's a pretty major increase.
Right.
And so, but nobody in the media, no mainstream media outlet reported that. Trump on the Friday after the debate had a press conference where he went through all these numbers, and you will look in vain. I mean, there's the New York Post, there's the Washington Times, there's Breitbart, some people in the conservative bubble that reported these crime data, but no one else outside, New York Times, Washington Post, AP. The AP did a fact check on Trump's press conference, but even in their fact check, where they say, well, these aren't big increases, they wouldn't even mention the percentages, because if they had mentioned the percentages, it would have been clear that these were large increases that were occurring there. And then fast forward to this week, you have the FBI comes out on Monday with their new data and hundreds of headlines about how violent crime is falling. None of them, not one single news outlet, has mentioned that the FBI redid its crime data for 2022, going from a drop to an increase. After they've had headlines for a year, using the 2022 data, you would think somebody would say, oh, by the way, all those headlines that we've had were wrong, even using the FBI data.
Right. Well, I think that shows, again, we're talking about willfulness, whether it's intentional. There's some obvious willful blindness in there on those keys. We're going to continue this discussion. Dr. John Lott is our guest, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center at crimeresearch.org. Back with more of the Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes. Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right, Dr. John Lott is our guest, again, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. And I wasn't trying to be ignorant there, John. I really wanted to point out, and I'm glad that you really dove down into this. This article that you have over at the CPRC website, which I've linked in the chat room for those of you who may want to go actually and read this article, where you break this down. I mean, you are directly quoting from source after source of showing that there is. I mean, it's like they're not even hiding it anymore. It's like they're not even just pretending to be non-biased or fair and balanced about things. They are just willfully ignoring any number that doesn't show that, I guess, their team has been doing a good job. I mean, your headline kind of says it all. The headline where you say that the crime data just released shows that violent crime, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault are soaring under Biden-Harris, and that should be the headline in every major news outlet in the country with these numbers.
Yeah, I mean, you at least think it'd be a couple of them. Instead, they insist on ignoring that data and focusing on just reported crimes from the FBI and refuse to even mention, oh, by the way, all those headlines we had for 2022's data were wrong. The FBI has corrected it. Recently we had this situation with the Department of Labor. The Bureau of Labor Statistics had admitted a little while ago that they had overestimated the number of jobs created over the last year by like 818,000. It's just something similar happening here, where rather than a drop that they were claiming for 2022. There was an increase, and that increase is actually larger than the drop that they're claiming now for 2023.
Right.
And
Well,
so,
that's a big oopsie. That's not like we overestimated it by 8,000 jobs. That's a significant number of the jobs that were supposedly created in their reporting.
oh yeah, what? So here's the deal with regard to the jobs numbers, and that is the U.S. population is increasing, not even including illegals there, by about 170,000 a month. And so, just to keep constant in terms of the percentage of people who are employed, you have to create 170,000 jobs every month. The media doesn't mention that normally when they say, well, 125,000 or 150,000 jobs were created this month. But just to keep even, just to make sure that the new flow of people coming in are getting jobs, that's the net increase that they have to have. And now with this adjustment, it's pretty clear over the year that the job growth was not keeping up with the growth in the population. The other thing that's clear is that the jobs that were made were two things. One is they were all, in fact, more than all, part-time jobs. And secondly, so the number of full-time jobs actually fell over that period, over the last couple of years, actually. And the other thing is we have some data on who got the jobs in terms of whether they were native-born Americans. The number of native-born Americans working has fallen over the last year by about 1.3 million. The number of jobs for non-native born Americans has increased by about 1.2 million. And so now the Biden administration could break those down by whether they're legal or illegal aliens, people that they've given work permits out to over the last year or so, but they kind of refuse to do that.
Right. Well, and again, part of this problem is we need to be able to make rational decisions, and to do that, we need the best data possible. And if they continue to ignore some of this data, it's going to create some problems. And I want to kind of discuss
They
that.
do it. Well, they do it for a couple reasons. I think is pretty clear.
Well, hold the line,
One
John.
reason why-
We're gonna join the radio here, and then we'll tackle this here real quick. John Lott, Dr. John Lott, our guest, the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe. Here we go.
What the hell is an assault weapon? Does that mean that if we hurt your feelings, you should consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can accept that. Here's Michael Dukes. Kind of a dick, but somewhat funny.
All right, we're back. Dr. John Lott is our guest from the CPRC, the Crime Prevention Research Center. You can find all of his writings, analysis, interviews, and everything else at crimeresearch.org. Dr. Lott, right before we came back, I was just mentioning, as I'd said earlier, that, decision-making is easy once you have all the facts, but you've got to have the right facts. And if you're only getting half the story, it's a problem. I mean, what are they using these statistics from both the Uniform Crime Reporting and from like the National Crime Victimization Survey? This has a big impact on how we create policy. So if they're not utilizing these things properly, I mean, what are we going to get wrong? What's going to happen here?
Well, I think the bias, I've never seen such bias. It's just amazing. I had a press briefing a couple weeks ago where apparently well over a couple hundred reporters were on there, where I went through this type of information. And as I mentioned before, it's like they didn't even hear it. It's like they didn't even mention that there's this national crime victimization data there. It's one thing if they had said, so there's so many layers of bias. They keep on referring to violent crime falling. Well, that's not, even if you want to use the FBI data for 2023, ignore the increase in 2021. What they should say is the FBI's measure of reported crime crime, because there's a difference between reported crime, because most crimes aren't reported, and total crime. So for accuracy, everybody from David Muir to everybody else should at least, say reported crime went down in 2023. But that's too much for them to do. You would think at least they would mention that there's the FBI data and there's this other measure, the National Crime Victimization Data. And if they want to just go with reported crime, if that's really what they think people are interested in, then they could say, look, we have these two measures of reported crime. Both of them are going up in 2022. One's going down in 2023 and the other one's going up. They could do something like that, but no, they systematically just mention the ones that are going in the direction. And then when those are revised up, they ignore that. And so, it's just crazy stuff that's there. So, and as I say, I did a press briefing with a couple hundred reporters, and none of the mainstream media will even mention the percentage increases under
Right.
using the National Crime Victimization Data.
Right. What is the solution for this, Dr. Lott? I mean, how can we? I mean, obviously, we've got a disconnect here between reported crimes and whether they're reported to the FBI or to the police, and crimes that are actually happening. In your mind, what is the solution? And if we're able to kind of find some way to bring that together, will the news media even pay attention to that? I guess based on what you're saying right now. I mean, I guess, does it matter at that point if we're?
Well, I think they're doing it for two reasons. First of all, I should have mentioned this for your previous question, but I think one reason is they just want to help out the Democrats. I think can't be any more obvious that they're trying to do that. And secondly, the issue of illegal aliens, and many Democrats have made this explicit. They say, look, we've had many millions of illegals, though they don't call them illegals, coming into the country. And crime is going down, they'll claim. And so illegals can't be causing more crime. You have Democrats, you have places like Cato, you have all sorts of, the media, all sorts of places that want to make that type of claim there. And so it's just willfulness on their part to try to push an agenda. And so what's the solution? Well, it's radio shows like yours. People can go to our website at crimeresearch.org. I have links in our posts to the government data so people can go and check it themselves. Nobody needs to take my word for these things. All our posts have links to the underlying data so that people can go and check those things. Credibility is important on this, and people can see the changes that have occurred.
I'm just so shocked, quite honestly, at how, again, a lot of this information is just blatantly ignored. And that's what bothers me most about this, is that the data is available out there, but they're just turning a blind eye to it. And to me, that is the most criminal part of this whole thing, is that, we get these stories, and then, like you said, David Muir trying to fact check the president with wrong facts. And most people are not going to take the time to.
Time after time, Muir's fact checks were wrong. I mean, it's just crazy. So not only does he first fact check Trump on the FBI, saying, the FBI shows that violent crime is going down, but then when Trump tries to explain to him that a large number of police departments, 3 of the 5 largest police departments for the data that Trump was referring to, didn't have crime data reported to the FBI. New York City, Los Angeles, and Phoenix, 3 of the 5 most populous cities in the country. In fact, 7 of the 19 most populous cities didn't report their crime data to the FBI. I mean, that's pretty. But when Trump made that point, David Muir audibly guffawed. It's just like crazy. It's like, not only did he interrupt Trump with the stupid fact check that was completely wrong, he didn't go and say the FBI's measure of reported crime. At least he would have been accurate there, even if he wanted to ignore the national crime victimization data. But he wanted it to pretend like somehow it was total crime. And but even when Trump again was correctly trying to explain to him, he has to interject himself with a guffaw that people in the could hear, to kind of put an exclamation point that he was claiming that Trump was wrong there too.
Right. I mean, this is frustrating, but again, this isn't the only instance of this kind of stuff happening. In fact, you had an interview recently with John Stossel talking about other statistics and metrics that are being, skewed or not reported properly. And what I'm talking about there is the defensive gun use, right? I mean, there seems to be a whole new narrative that this they call it the so-called myth of the good guy with a gun is actually not doing anything. It's so rare you shouldn't carry a gun because it wouldn't matter because you couldn't do anything anyway. And you wrote a piece in the Federalist and talked to Stossel specifically about this to say those numbers are also wrong, and the CDC is suppressing a lot of that stuff.
Look, I mean, it's just outrageous how the government is messing up the data that they put out and suppressing data based on politics. So the CDC removed information from its website on rates of defensive gun use because gun control groups like the Gun Violence Archive, which is a darling of the media who cite them constantly all the time, Freedom of Information Act got emails that the head of the Gun Violence Archive had sent to the Centers for Disease Control saying that, look, you should remove this from your website because it's making it more difficult for us to go and lobby for the types of gun control laws that we want to get passed. I mean, as if somehow whether the Centers for Disease Control should put out data on their website based upon whether or not some special interest group, in this case supporting gun control, thinks that it makes their lobbying job for the types of regulations that they want more or less difficult. Is the data right or wrong? That should be the only consideration, not these extraneous extra things about helping their political battles that are there.
Well, this is the new
FBI.
This is the new landscape, right? I mean, this is the new lawfare landscape of jawboning and forcing companies and agencies to stop reporting things that are unfavorable to their political philosophy.
No, I agree. But, it goes even deeper, though. I mean, the data that the FBI puts out in a number of different areas, as you were indicating, is corrupted. So the FBI puts out these annual active shooting reports. An active shooting is a case where guns fired in public, aimed at harming somebody, anything from one shot being fired and missed, all the way up to a mass public shooting. It excludes other types of crimes that are occurring, like robberies or a gang fight over drug turf. But the FBI claims that over the last decade, there's been about 300 of these, and that only 4%, something like about 14 of them, are cases that are stopped by citizens legally carrying a permanent concealed handgun. Well, when I was at the FBI, when I was at the Department of Justice and dealing with the FBI, I pointed out to them that they were missing lots of defensive gun use cases. And we've continued at the Crime Prevention Research Center after I've left the Department of Justice to continue to collect these cases. And what you find is that I think they've missed like 180 cases of civilians using their guns to stop these attacks. So rather than 4%, I believe, and nobody needs to take my word for it. We have a list of all these cases. Police departments don't collect these cases. The FBI relies on people doing Google News searches of all things to go and collect these cases. And so we've gone through the same way, collected the cases that meet the definition that's there. And and we find that rather than 4%, it's actually slightly over 35%. But it's worse than that, okay? Because one of the arguments I had with the FBI people when I was at the Department of Justice, I said, look, guys, you're talking about law-abiding citizens stopping these attacks. You can't expect a law-abiding citizens to stop an attack in a place where guns are banned.
Right.
And so what you want to do is you want to see the rate that they stop attacks in places where they're legally allowed to carry a gun. And when you do that, rather than 35%, you find that over half of the active shooting cases are stopped by civilians with a concealed carry permit. That's a huge difference from 4%. That's
Right.
there. But their numbers are used in academic research. Their numbers are used in court cases all the time. They're cited by gun control activists constantly, and they're used by the news media all the time. And so it goes and really creates a lot of misinformation out there. And again, nobody needs to take my word for it. And I've talked to people in the press when they've gone and put out these news stories using the FBI data. The Associated Press a while ago put out a story. I contacted the reporter. I said, look, here are all these cases that they've missed, and hoping that they would write a correction for the story. But of course not. I contacted the guy again. I said, why didn't you put up a correction? And he said, well, he had accurately quoted the FBI. I said, look, I'm not claiming you didn't accurately report the FBI. It seems to me it's a news story just to say the FBI got it massively wrong.
Right. The underlying data is wrong. The underlying data is not working.
And I told him, you don't need to take my word for it. Here are the cases. You can check them yourself. But his response was basically, look, we're just doing it. I'm just quoting the FBI.
Right.
Look, you would think it's a news story to say that the FBI has put out a report with fundamentally flawed data. Why isn't that a news story by itself?
Should be a headline in every major newspaper. Absolutely. Dr. John Lott is our guest. We're going to return in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, we're in the commercial break. Dr. John Lott is our guest. Harold, I think your Harold is part of the problem here. Harold makes the comment, and I think you just missed the whole point of the entire last 44 minutes, Harold. He says, actually, crime has dropped, and then he links to the UCR report from the Department of Justice. That's the whole point, Harold. When you have over, almost 50% of the police departments not reporting data to the Department of Justice to be included in the UCR report, how can you even know? How can you even know? And have you checked the National Crime Victimization Survey, Harold? Have you looked at the data and how it compares? I mean, I think you should just go back and listen to the last 30 minutes of Dr. Lott explaining exactly why those numbers are incorrect. I think that should be.
The problem is, even if he wants to use the FBI data, and as you point out, fewer than half the police departments reported complete data in 2022 to them. But even if you want to do it, it's reported crimes. It's not total crimes. The way he just said crime went down, that's not even what the FBI claims. FBI claims reported crimes. The number of reported crimes went down. And people need to understand that number of reported crimes isn't the same thing as the total number of crimes. But even then, he needs to go and check the data for 2022, because there they say it increased by 4.5% compared to the 3% drop in 2023. So even if you want to just look at reported crimes and only look at the FBI's measure of reported crimes, because as I say, the National Crime Victimization Data's measure of reported crimes showed huge increases. in 2022, and even a significant increase in 2023 of reported crimes. Even if you want to just do that, over the last 2 years, it's actually increased total, because the 2022 increase was bigger than the 2023 decrease. So, I don't know. I mean, but the point is, he, like everybody else, just keeps reporting crime is down, and they don't just put down reported crime by this one measure, which has lots of problems with it, because fewer than half of police departments are reporting complete data to them.
Right. And you faced this directly when you were in the DOJ trying to get you were the researcher in the DOJ trying to get the FBI to correct some of this stuff. And there was even pushback when you were showing them facts. They to this day have still not fixed some of the facts that you went back and said, look, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong. And they still haven't corrected some of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, with regard to the active shooting data, even a case where they would acknowledge that they've made a mistake years later, they still haven't fixed it. And so, it's just crazy stuff. That I don't know. I mean, sometimes I've been asked, how is it that you can have the FBI spy on a presidential campaign without having some leaks or whistleblowers? And my response is, well, if everybody agrees with everybody else politically, which is what they do in some of these areas within the FBI, then, you can understand it. But I can't speak outside of the data people, but the data people, at least the ones that I had interaction with, all seem to be true believers in terms of where they're coming from politically.
Right.
And it affects the debate. You've been mentioning that several times. It affects who might win the presidential election. Okay.
Right.
It affects the debate about illegal aliens and crime.
Right.
It affects whether people want to go and do something, so you have all these George Soros prosecutors out there refusing to prosecute violent criminals. You have cuts the number of police departments, in police departments. You have all this paperwork that's being put on police officers that effectively reduce the number of hours that they're actually out there doing policing. In California, if an officer tries to give somebody a citation for a traffic violation, they have to spend about 45 minutes filling out forms about who they talked to, why they talked to them, what they talked to them about. And they have to go and figure out things like guess the sexual orientation of the person that they just gave the traffic citation to. As if somehow when a car is speeding by, you say, oh, that's a gay person that's speeding, I'm going to have to pull him over. It's just crazy stuff. In Chicago, every time a police officer goes and talks to somebody, they have to spend an hour filling out a report. 4 people you talk to in the morning, your whole afternoon is taken up doing paperwork.
Right, which again makes you less effective as well. Dr. John Lott is our guest. The Michael Dukes Show. One final segment is dead ahead. You could find all this information, if you care to look, at crimeresearch.org. We're going to continue ahead here, jumping back to the radio. Please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Here we go.
What the hell's an assault weapon?
If we could just figure out how to get all of the murder guns and the attack guns and not keep selling those to people and just sell protection guns, I think that would be great and solve a lot of problems.
Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
Yep, only protection guns in my house, no attack guns or murder guns. That's how it works, of course. Dr. John Lott is our guest. He is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. You can find them at crimeresearch.org. Dr. Lott, we were just talking, and some of the folks in the chat room have said, Harold says, if you just use the court data, at least you'd get reported data, not the true level of crime in Alaska, which is largely unreported. But I think that's your point. There's plenty of crime out there that doesn't get reported. It doesn't even get a police report filed, but victims are still out there. It's still occurring. That's the problem. So what is in your mind? Is there a solution to this problem?
Well, we already have a solution. We have the National Crime Victimization Survey. They survey an incredible 240,000 people a year. Look, many people consider a very large survey, a huge survey of being maybe 8,000 or maybe 10,000 people. Every once in a while, I'll see a survey of 16,000 people. And those are considered truly massive surveys that are done. Here we have 240,000 people that are surveyed across the country. I don't know how much larger you can get than that. And, you talk about court data. Not everybody who's arrested gets charged. So you look at court data, not only are you not getting all the crimes that are reported to police, you're not even getting all the arrests in the court data. Just because somebody's arrested doesn't mean that they get charged. They're not arraigned necessarily. They could be released without being charged. And so, and if you want to go and look at convictions or whatever, not everybody who gets charged gets prosecuted. Not everybody who gets prosecuted gets convicted. And so, though it's high, about 95% or so of those who are prosecuted end up getting convicted. But, you have these gaps there. And, so we have it. Now, maybe, there are things I would do to deal with the national crime victimization data. I think there's improvements that could be made with it. But, that's not the basic issue. Is that we already have this data. We already have this measure of total crime. The media has been told constantly about this, and they're just refusing. They're just selective. They're not even accurate. Even if they just, I don't know how many times I can say this, but even if they just want to use the FBI data with all of its problems, at least do it correctly. At least say the FBI's measure of crimes reported to police have fallen. Okay, rather than making it sound like they're talking about total crimes all the time, as your person who's just writing in did.
Let's go back real quick to the defensive gun use thing, because we've seen many studies on this. Even the lowest study, I think the Harvard had a study that said it was something like 90,000. That was one of the lowest.
No, that's not. It's there. There's two general groups of data out there. There's the data from the National Crime Victimization Survey that we're talking about here.
Right.
And that shows like 125,000. That's the low number. And then you have all these other surveys that show anything from like 500,000 handgun defensive gun uses to, maybe 3.6 million total. On average, I'd say it's about 2 million. But why the difference? Why does one give you around 100,000 or so, and does the other give you on average 2 million? And there's a simple explanation for that. The National Crime Victimization Survey, when they're asking people how they respond, before they get to that, there's an initial question that they ask, and they say, have you been a victim of a violent crime? I would argue that even the National Crime Victimization data underestimates the amount of crime that's there, because let's say a criminal comes up to you, you brandish a gun, the criminal runs away, no shots are fired, no crime actually committed. And I ask you, have you been a victim of a violent crime? You may say no, because you stopped it before you were a victim.
Right.
Now, but the thing is, because of that, the National Crime Victimization data never gets around to asking the person any questions about the characteristics of the criminal or how you responded, because, as soon as you say you weren't a victim, then they skip all those questions. And so so the difference is that we know about 95% or so of the time that people use guns defensively, they simply have to brandish the gun in order to cause a criminal to break off an attack. So all those cases are missing from the 100,000 estimate that's there.
Right, right. So the numbers are obviously low, and they just keep trying to utilize this myth term and everything else. And again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. When you have a philosophy that's informing everything you do, and you want to get guns off the street in your heart of hearts, and so they want to venalize and and tell these people, no, you really can't make a difference. That's the biggest part of the problem.
Yeah, I agree.
We're down to the last 2 minutes here, Dr. Lott. Are you working on anything else? People need to be looking at something. What are your final thoughts here?
Well, I mean, I'm working on stuff. I guess I'll wait until we actually kind of finish it before I kind of put it out publicly for people. But, you can go to our website and we put out research very regularly. There's lots of topics that we haven't talked about that we put out posts on recently. We've recently just updated our discussion about AI chatbots. You and I had talked about that many months ago, but we've gone through it again. And what we find is that on issues of crime and gun control, what were already extremely liberal biases in terms of this artificial intelligence, giving the left wing line on these things, saying things like arrest rates and conviction rates don't affect crime rates. Liberal prosecutors who are refusing to prosecute violent criminals don't cause more crime. Those types of answers have gotten even more left wing as we've gotten closer to the election.
Right.
We have questions in there about whether voter IDs can reduce vote fraud, and of course, all the AI chatbots say that voter IDs don't reduce vote fraud. So it's not too surprising given that people use like Google News Search and they see that the ones that come up are weighted towards the New York Times and Washington Post.
Right.
The AI chatbots go and rely on the same sources for their information.
Yeah, that's what we called GIGO, right? Garbage in, garbage out. It's all about the programming at that point. Dr.
But
John
people
Lott.
can find more at our website at crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org.
Yep. Go over there and you can actually watch the latest interview with John Stossel. I posted that link up as well in the chat. You can check it out over there as well. Dr. John Lott, as always, my friend, thank you so much for coming on board and joining us. It was a pleasure to talk to you again today.
No, my pleasure. Yeah, I think the video with Stossel turned out extremely well, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Folks, we're out of time for hour one. Dr. John Lott, our guest, The Michael Duke Show. Whenever we interview Dr. Lott, I feel like I'm kind of wrestling with a bear because he's got so much information, and I'm trying to parse it out to everyone and make it intelligible to me. So hopefully it is intelligible to you. But it's some great stuff. I hope you get a chance to go over there and take a look at that and watch the video of John Stossel. And, of course, take a look at all the stuff that Dr. Lott has written because it is fascinating stuff. All right, my friends. Well, let's get to it. We got some headlines here, some 2A headlines that are coming up. I don't think that I just thought about it because Chris Chang has been sick, and I don't think that he's planning on I don't think he's planning on being on the show today, but I just remembered that I probably should check in with him. Let me just ask him a question. Let me do that right there. Okay. Just ask him a question on the interwebs, and we'll see what he has to say here in just a minute right there. All right. But yeah, Harold, I think if you go back and actually listen to what Dr. Lott was saying, you'll see that, the reporting and the data is exactly what he was talking about, that's part of the problem. When we don't have all the statistics, I mean, we're, again, going back to what he's saying, when the fact that you have 31% of the police departments in the country, including 3 of the top 5, are not even reporting crime data to the FBI. And then add to that the other 24% that have only partial data. That means that basically 55% of all police departments are reporting little to no data to the FBI. So how can you have good, solid statistical analysis when you're missing more than half the data? That's part of the problem right there. And why aren't they putting more weight into the National Crime Victimization Survey versus, the reported crimes? Because as he said, if you stop a crime right out of the gate and it really doesn't occur, but you want to call the police and say, hey, this happened, but I stopped it, and there's no police report filed or anything else, or maybe you just don't even bother to call. I mean, how can we know exactly what's going on? I recommend that you go over there and take a look at this piece, Harold specifically, because he's the one that was asking those questions. This is the piece right here from crimeresearch.org that has all the footnotes and all the data and links to everything else. You can go check it out and see it specifically and read that at your leisure as well. Let me see. There we go. Okay. I just want to say there was a, there it was. It was the Harvard. Harvard actually did have a study on defensive gun use. It was the Chan School of Public Health at Harvard that had a study of defensive gun use as well, but it was even higher than what he was talking about in the National Crime Victimization Survey. So anyway, you can go out there and you can take a look at this. But as he said, the high is over 3 million, 3.5 million. The low is 100,000. But somewhere in there is the truth, and it's probably closer to 2 million. And as he said in his discussion on the National Crime Victimization Survey, if you stop the crime before it occurs, were you really a victim of a violent crime? Right? That's the question. Or were you a victim of a violent crime? If the answer is no, then you don't get asked all the other questions. Jeannie says, think about it. With all the bad press the FBI is getting, why invest the time and effort into reporting crime? And it's not, you're right. But it's not just the FBI. With everybody around you telling you how dirty the police are, and, running for defund the police movements, and everybody's afraid, who is going to go to the regular police? Let alone, even if they have the manpower and the effort and they can actually, take it on, who is going to go, who is going to go to them for it? You're going to have a tremendous lack of reporting of crime because there's a lack of trust in the overall, criminal justice system as it is. I mean, David says, does this mean we can tell the IRS about half of our earnings? You do you, boo. Right? You're on your own on that one, David. Few things in this world scare me. The IRS is one of them, right? You don't want to do nothing that, But yeah, I mean, this is, again, every time somebody points to, oh, this should be taken over by the government and handled by the government, I'm like, well, I got examples of that already. The USPS, the DMV, and the FBI, right? I mean, do we really want to have a government organization do something like that? Brian says, there is a balance when you're expecting the people tasked with reporting data, but you're asking for too much. People fatigue on entering data. Part of any good study requires the researchers have a plan to evaluate not only the data, but the collection of data. And I would not disagree with that. I would not disagree with that at all. What are your thoughts on this? I'm opening up the phone lines right now. 319-527-3864. Phone lines are open if you want to call in. We're going to continue hour 2 of Firearms Friday. We're going to start off with some phone calls. I see Bubba's calling in from North Pole this morning. or maybe not. Maybe it's somebody else. We'll see. We'll see who it is. We'll be back with more right after this.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show. I have 2 guns, one for each of you. Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Dukes Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
This is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fighting, this is for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Yep, Firearms Friday, your chance to sound off on issues of a 2A nature right here on the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator, and live around the world on the internet on my website at michaeldukesshow.com. You can also click there on the social media links for Facebook or YouTube, where we also simulcast the show as a video every day. You can see this lovely face every morning. I wouldn't subject anybody to that. We're continuing on now. We just finished up with Dr. John Lott. It was a great interview. If you missed it, you can go back and listen to it on the podcast, which is available on Spotify and other places. I didn't realize Spotify actually does transcripts of the show, and they actually do like chapters and stuff. It doesn't always work very well, but I was just looking through Spotify yesterday at something for the show, and I noticed that, and I didn't know that it did that. It's, welcome to the world of AI. It's interesting stuff. Anyway, I'm opening up the phone lines here for hour 2. We're going to take some phone calls from you, the listeners. What are your thoughts on this reporting of the UCR, the Uniform Crime Reports, and the National Crime Victimization Surveys, and the complicity of the news media in not discerning the difference between the two? I think it's an interesting thing to look at. I'm a little chagrined about what's happening with it. But what are your thoughts on it? 319-527-3864, 319-527-3864. Also have a couple headlines that I'd like to talk about. And of course, we're going to be finishing up this hour with Willie Waffle from the movie reviews. He's going to be doing entertainment and movie reviews with us. Let's head over to the phones right now, since your calls reign supreme today. No such thing as a dumb gun question. We'll go over there right now and get started. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Morning, Mike. It's Robert from Anchorage.
Morning, Robert. What's on your mind, my friend?
I want to see what the people think about this, because I found a Facebook post that said Costco was going to be closing their food court exit so people can't sneak in, and you have to come in the main entrance and show your ID, which is what the club is about. And I think I got canceled from the Facebook page for my post saying that's a good idea, because if they're like Walmart and other stores where people go in there and just shoplift like crazy all they want, and they can't do anything, the cops can't touch them. Speaking about crime and your topic, and that people got really mad about my post and other people saying, well, this is a great idea. I couldn't believe other people were saying, well, that's discrimination, that's racist. And I think I got banned from that Facebook page because of it.
It's racist to say it's a good idea to control the exits and entrances of a private club, which is what Costco is, right? You got to pay to be a member. So it's racist and discriminatory to close a secondary entrance because people are going in and stealing stuff. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, that's people who just want to be offended by something.
Walgreens and Target and other places are closing their stores because of the shoplifting problems, and stores are putting everything behind glass because they can't stop the people from grabbing stuff and then just walking out, and they can't call the police because the police won't do much. And if they wrestle the people or hurt them, they'll get sued, and they'll lose more money than what the shoplifting is costing.
Oh yeah, I mean, so, look at what happened.
I want to see what other people feel about trying to stop the crime, and other people saying, well, that's not right. They shouldn't do that.
Right. Well, I mean, look what happened in Chicago. In Chicago, places like Walmart and others, they just shut the doors. They just said, we're done. And the city of Chicago is in a panic, and they're like, well, you can't do that because these people. But the problem is when stuff is flying off your shelves and nobody's paying for it, and they have no ability to stop it, then the answer is, like you said, and how many stores have you been to lately? And it's interesting to go to a Walmart in one area of town or one area of the state, and then go to Walmart in another area of the state and see in one store, everything's locked up behind plexiglass, and in the other, you can just walk up to it and pick it off the shelf. That just shows you where the crime is heaviest, which is a little troubling. But I mean, that's the thing. How do they defend themselves? And how is defending yourself, and I don't mean in a violent way, I mean by putting things behind glass or closing the door. How is that now racist or discriminatory? Because we're not going to offer free stuff to people and continue to lose money? That makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I have friends that go to Eagle River Walmart because it's the safest and nicest Walmart in the state.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've seen it. I mean, when I first walked into one section of the Wasilla Walmart, I'm like, why is all this stuff under plexiglass? Because I had been in a Walmart 3 or 4 months ago down in Anchorage or in Eagle River, and I'm like, why is all this stuff? And then I realized, oh, well, it must be because the rate of crime here is much higher. And as you said, I mean, we've seen plenty of videos of people walking out of a Home Depot with a cart full of expensive tools, or, taking a whole shopping cart out of a grocery store or Walmart without stopping. And like you said, the hands are tied. If they happen to injure somebody trying to stop them from stealing, they're in big trouble. And in fact, the corporate policy for many of these places is just let them do what they want. And look at what's happened in California. I mean, California, there are roaming gangs literally breaking into places and not breaking, just brazenly walking into places and stripping off designer handbags, iPhones, I mean, all kinds of stuff, just stripping a store down to its studs and then walking out the door blithely. I mean, is that the kind of society we want to live in?
Yeah, and then also the parking lot. If you have one of those where all these criminals are hanging out, you leave your car in the parking lot, you might come out and your car might not be there, or the window might be broken. So good on Costco for making it safe for the shoppers. We pay to be in the club and everything, but at least they're worrying about. They're probably worrying about more about the shoppers' safety than the shoplifting. But I really appreciate a store like Costco. And I wish the other stores would go to club membership so they can do this too.
Yeah, it is a little shocking, like you said, that when you voice support for something like that, you're immediately attacked by people. But it is the internet, Rob. I mean, have you been on the internet? People will be offended by just about anything you say on the internet. Yeah, you know what I mean? All right. Well, I appreciate you calling in this morning. Thanks for being part of it.
Okay, Mike, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Phone lines are open right now. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. I mean, this was the whole impetus behind the rescinding of SB 91, remember? Because that's when people discovered that it was just a slap on the wrist to if you went and and shoplifted a bunch of stuff, they just write you a ticket, right? If you got caught and if you got stopped, they just write you a ticket. And like you were a criminal, like you had any intention of actually paying it, right? This is, again, part of the whole problem. Treating criminals as if they are the victims, and then the victims, of course, end up having to pay for it all. That's when people really start to lose respect for, the justice system, the rule of law, and everything else. And I'm not surprised that Rob got, so much hate on the internet because he dared to say they should be able to have control of their exits and entry points. I mean, that, I'm not surprised. Again, have you seen the internet these days? There's people out there who are going to be outraged by everything. But this, again, reminds me about why, I have always advocated that I shall go forth armed only to be able to protect myself and those around me. Because if we're going to coddle those kind of criminals, I mean, I'm not going to be a victim. I refuse to be a victim. What really surprises me is when people like that get up on Facebook and get on their high horse and tell people like Robert how wrong he is. I just wonder what would happen and how would you feel if I'm talking to the hypothetical person who's being, who's being demeaning on Facebook. What happens if you're a victim of a crime? Does that mean that you just, here, take my watch, take my wallet, take everything you want because you're the victim? Or would you be outraged? Would you be sad and upset that you are unable to defend yourself? Is this the new normal where we let the strong survive, the strong rule by fear, violence, and fiat? Is that what we need to do? It's, again, I refuse to be a victim in that regard. I will protect myself one way or the other. There's just no other way about it. I'm not gonna do it any other way. Period. Full stop. End of sentence. And again, it's one of the reasons why I decided many, many years ago to go forth armed, because that, to me, to be able to defend myself, my family, those around me. Nobody was coming to my aid. I didn't expect anybody to be able to come to my aid or come to my defense. That was my responsibility. And that's why I made those decisions as well. Well, Wednesday this week was a bad day for gun control in California. You've all heard how California is the utopia of gun. It's super safe, right? It's super safe. Tom Knighton over at Bearing Arms writes a story about this week where he's like, hey, look, California, these guys, man, super safe, right? But then you get these two high-profile incidents that basically prove that whole point to be absolutely false. The first, there was a bus trip that went horribly wrong. One person was killed when a Metro bus was hijacked at gunpoint about 12:45 a.m. on Wednesday in stringently gun-controlled Los Angeles, California. KTLA reported that the LAPD received calls regarding the incident and learned that a person on a bus had pulled out a gun, prompting the driver to activate the panic button that displays a call 911 sign on the outside of the bus. Responding officers located the bus, but it began to be driven away from them as they approached it. The deputy chief noted that the bus driver had a gun pressed to his head and drove away from the officers because he was ordered to do so. The suspected hijacker was later arrested, and a bus passenger with multiple gunshot wounds was discovered, and that passenger later died at the hospital. But don't worry, it's California. That kind of stuff is illegal. They will take care of it. But what if people can't get guns? I mean, that's what the folks on the anti-gun crowd say. And if we could just, in a perfect world, if we could just take all the guns and get them away, then it wouldn't be a problem. I mean, but would it really make us safer? Tom asks. Well, based on what happened on Wednesday in Sacramento, maybe not. A man who was facing a firearm charge walked into a California courthouse on the day of his arraignment Wednesday morning and threw a bag containing explosives that went off, injuring several people. It was at the courthouse in Santa Maria. The suspect had no known ties to terrorism, but the FBI, along with the U.S. Attorney's Office, are investigating the incident. Shortly after the explosion, the suspect, identified as 20-year-old Nathaniel McGuire, was apprehended by a security guard and a county sheriff. They said during the news hour after the incident, he was arrested on suspicion of several felonies, including attempted murder, using an explosive device to kill, and possession of explosives. 6 people were injured. Luckily, nobody was killed. I mean, that's the lucky thing here. But here's the thing. This guy was already facing a firearms charge, but he's 20 years old. He can't buy any firearm lawfully. Not a single, but he found a way because criminals gonna criminal, right? Criminals gonna do bad things. But somehow if we just had that one more law, it would fix it. Until they make some explosives, or until they rent a van and run a bunch of people down, or until they take a machete, or until criminals are going to do criminal things. Penalizing and criminalizing law-abiding citizens, the 99.9996% of us out there that are lawful, legal, and law-abiding is not going to fix the problem. Not going to fix the problem. All right, we got more. One more segment, and then Willie Waffle. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense, Liberty Base, Free Thinking Radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, my friends. Hello and welcome back. Let's see. Good morning from Bangor, Maine. Bangor. I love that name. I don't know why. It's just Bangor. Bangor. Welcome. Hey, Melody. I hope you're enjoying yourself out there in Bangor, Maine. Brian asks, do you want to mention the hand-waving freak-outery piece, HWFO, which is hand-waving freak-outery? Brian and I were talking this week because hand-waving freak-outery actually had a piece on his Substack where it was a podcast it was an NPR podcast reviewing hand-waving freak-outery's Substack blog. The problem is the entire thing was 100% AI generated. And I will just tell you right now, it was spooky as hell. You should go listen to it. It's about a 9-minute piece, a segment of this podcast, which it's not real. I mean, but when you listen to it, and in fact, it took me a minute to kind of figure it all out. You're like, this is so freaking spooky. But yeah, Brian, we may have a segment on that here in the coming weeks or coming days. Definitely some interesting stuff. Brian wonders if ChatGPT can come up with a good dumb question. Well, possibly, possibly. And then Harold later on said he asked ChatGPT and it said, "Can a gun shoot around corners if you bend the barrel?" Well, I mean, that's not necessarily even a dumb gun question. There are actual guns that are designed to shoot around corners. It's really interesting. There is a gun that's designed to shoot around corners, but the barrel is not bent. The whole framework is pivots. The mechanism, the firing mechanism, the barrel all basically can turn at 90 degrees to the stock of the gun. But I still wouldn't say that's a dumb gun question. No, if you bend the barrel of a gun, it more than likely will explode when you pull the trigger. I mean, that's because of, kinetic energy forces, explosive charges. That's kind of what's going to happen. So even that, I would say, is not a dumb gun question. But it does raise, again, the interesting question of how people have gotten around that. They make specialty guns for that kind of purpose, for like hostage rescue teams and things like that, to where they can actually shoot around corners. It's kind of crazy, this stuff. Amy is speaking my language here when she says the internet is cancer. I mean, there's some really great things about the internet, this show being one of them, right? There's some really great things about the internet, but then there's just that, I don't know. And I don't know if it's the anonymity of the internet. People just feel like I can say anything I want because there's no consequences or what. But yeah, I've seen people say some just very mild things or ask just a very relevant question. My wife one time asked a question about, I can't remember where we were going, but asking, are there restaurants that are dog friendly where you can eat on the patio with your dog or something like that? And she just got flamed, just scorched. How dare you? We want to go eat at a place and we don't want your smelly, stinky little dog. And she just was asking, is there such a place? Now, there were some people who supported her, but the amount of people who were just flaming her for simply asking, are there restaurants that are dog friendly? You're right. It's cancer. I mean, a lot of it is. There's still a lot of good things. I mean, I love it. I wouldn't want to live without it. But at the same time, I just refuse to participate in some of that madness. I just refuse to participate in that kind of stuff. I'm trying to get caught up here on everything out there. Say hello to Jeff from Homer if you see him, Melody. That's right. Jeff's out in Maine. I don't know if he's near Bangor or not, but he's out there. This bent barrel rifle was one of the most I didn't realize there was a Nazi rifle that actually had a bent barrel. I'd only seen the modern day variants. So again, see, not such a dumb question after all. That's how that works.
What the hell's an assault weapon? What isn't? If I assault you with a penguin, doesn't that make it an assault weapon? Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
Welcome back to Firearms Friday. Phone lines are open. Somebody just asked, ChatGPT if there was a dumb gun question, and ChatGPT said, well, if you bend the barrel of your gun, can it shoot around corners? And that's not really a dumb question, because the answer is no. Generally speaking, if you just took a regular gun and did it, it wouldn't do it. They do make specialty guns that do that. And then Brian just educated me in the chat room. Apparently, there was a Nazi firearm during World War II that was actually a bent barrel rifle where they could shoot around corners with it. Apparently specifically engineered to shoot around corners. So, I mean, again, we learned something. There is no such thing as a dumb gun question. Phone lines are open, though, today. We'd love to hear what you have to say on this Firearms Friday. We've got this lone final segment before we go do our entertainment report. Fred is on the line, calling all the way in from beautiful the People's Republic of Rhode Island. He's out there. Good morning, Fred. What's on your mind, my friend?
Beautiful. Well, that's debatable. Anyway, used to be beautiful till the crazies get into office, and then it screwed it all up, like so many other places. However, the reason why I'm calling today is, you hit a good point earlier in your segment there about the kid went into the courtroom with explosives. I said this a long time ago. I mean, a criminal will use anything that they can get their hands on, and that would be the most next effective tool that they would use in as far as, like, you think mass shootings or something. Wait till you see mass explosions. I mean, I said this a long time ago. It's either going to be chemical, or it's going to be explosive. And with the cartel sitting south of us in their great relations with the Chinese, it would be nothing at all for the Chinese to smuggle in explosives into Mexico or some South American country and then smuggle them across the border here, but if there was enough of a demand for it from the criminal element. So, I mean, it's just a question of time before you're going to see probably the narrative change from the quote-unquote assault, weapon of war, assault weapon, to maybe C4 explosives or something similar to it.
Right.
That will be the next trend.
Well,
That's
I mean,
definitely gonna
again,
be it.
criminals.
But the thing is, it was not. Once again, it's not the tool; it's the individual. So, I mean, this whole thing with gun control and banning assault weapons, or what they want to call assault weapons, which is a joke. It's low-hanging fruit. It's the flavor of the month. It's just garbage. It's just total garbage to the solution to a non-problem. Because the problem is not the tool. Once again, it's the criminal. And until the justice system, turns its narrative around and goes after the criminal rather than coddling them and letting them out and not prosecuting them, till that changes, you're not going to see a whole lot of change, and it's going to continue to push for gun control, because I think gun control has become a world globalist agenda. They want to get the guns so they can have control over the populace.
Well, I mean,
that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, look,
that's the whole ball of wax.
Yeah, look, we've had the small arms survey, and the UN has been pushing for restricting, private firearms for years, and that's not anything I think that anybody is surprised about, Fred. And you're right, criminals are going to do. I mean, like I said, this kid with the explosives is just the latest. We've had machete attacks, we've had people driving cars. I mean, the guy who drove his car through the farmers market in California a dozen years ago, before, and the one where he ran down all the kiddies in New York, the guy who had the rental truck, or the guy in France who took that big Ryder truck and, rode down 86 people or something and killed a bunch of them. I mean, criminals are going to do, it's not the tool, it is the people. And until we stop treating them as if they are victims of some sort, this is never going to change. And villainizing the tool, in this case the firearm, and saying somehow Johnny was a perfect angel until he got his hands on this firearm, is just wrong. Johnny was a thug to begin with, and the firearm was just an easy tool for him to use. He could use, again, a knife, a baseball bat, a crowbar, whatever. I mean, we talk about assault weapons, right, or rifles. More people are beaten to death with hands, fists, and feet than are killed by long guns in this country every year. I mean, by an order of 2 or 3 to 1. So it doesn't matter what the tool is; it's the person who's wielding it always.
I think you can look at one other aspect of this too. Is I think that the gun control people, aligned with the whatever groups they're aligned with, probably the globalists or some other facet along those lines. They're using the gun control as a test. It's a test element. How far can they go? If they can get rid of the Second Amendment, that means they can get rid of everything, and that'll be the end of this country. They're well on their way to try to do that right now. But I think this whole gun control thing and the attack on the Second Amendment is a test control, and if they can pull it off, they can sit there and they can scratch enough cement off the dam's gonna burst. And I think that's one of their games.
Well, and that's assuming that the people would participate, that the people would obey, and that's one thing about this country that
apparently they believe they will, because they're not going to have a choice, because they're going to have the guns and they're going to have the control and they're going to have the quote unquote law on their side. So they can do whatever the hell they want to anybody they want, anytime they want, for any reason they want.
Well, but that's
nothing to stop them.
But
nothing to stop them.
That's a false belief. I mean, look at what happened with the New York SAFE Act, right? A 4% compliance rate. The Connecticut Act barely got into double digits. It was like 11% or something. So people are already refusing to comply with those things.
You're right. But you got to remember too, these people are breaking the law, but they do so willfully. They do willingly and willfully saying, to hell with you. We're not going to play that game. We don't go along with it. We don't agree with it. And we don't recognize it. But then again, that puts them on the other side of the fence automatically without doing anything.
Right. Absolutely. No, absolutely. You're right. But the thing is, again, just from a numerical, let's just take it from a numerical stance. There are 600,000 law enforcement in this country. That's including all the agencies and the police departments and everything else. 650,000 law enforcement in this country. There are 400 and something thousand guns in the hands of 24 million people. Right? I mean, that should tell you right there that we've got, there's 24 million ARs in this country. That should tell you right there that if people decide they're not going to comply, it's going to be a problem. How do you enforce that? How do you enforce that? Thank you. I'm sorry, Brian. How do you enforce that in this country? If there are so many more people who are armed and are legal, law-abiding citizens, how do you go out and enforce that? It's impossible.
You can't enforce it. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
they from their standpoint, they made you a felon, they made you a criminal. They did it. Now, for no reason at all, other than sitting there pushing their stupid agenda. This is what they don't care. Because at some point in time, if they really want to get you, they come after you and they get the ammunition to do it.
Right, exactly. When you have 400 million plus guns, and I said 400,000, but I meant 400 million, and some experts say that it's closer to 250 million firearms, not a half a billion. But when you get that, and you've got only 600,000 people to enforce it, and even if you brought the army in, and the army was another million people, which would include cooks and bottle washers and everybody else. The question is, how do you enforce that? There's just no way they can absolutely do that. Fred, thank you for your call. Hold the line for just a second. Folks, we got more coming up. Willie Waffle is up next. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Let's go back to Fred for his final thoughts here. Fred gets a little extra love because he's calling in from so far away, and it's such a pain. Final thoughts today, Fred, as we finish things up.
That's basically it. Just in a nutshell. All you have to do is just look at what's going on in the Middle East right now. It's been going on for a while. They've been blowing things up since since explosives were developed. This has become one of their favorite pastimes. Blow up a bus, blow up a building, blow up a facility. And it's becoming commonplace. So it's not the gun. It's not just the gun. It's just not popular over here yet. And I say yet because I think it's just a question of time. The tales of Beirut are going to be the tales of New York City.
Right. Well, I think if they keep pushing in that way, that could definitely pop up and be a problem. People will only be pushed so far.
Also, pushing the gun control agenda. It's gonna drive it that way. Whether they intend to or not, I think it's gonna drive it that way because if they can't use A, they're gonna use B.
Right.
And they make it harder to get A. B will definitely be taking its place real quick.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. All right, Fred. Well, thank you so much, my friend. It's good to talk with you. We'll talk with you next week.
Okay, you take care, Mike. Have a good week.
Thanks so much for calling in. Let's go back to the comments here. Richie says, it does seem strange that 99% of the school shooters, attempted assassins, and other violent criminals identify with a political party that are crying about gun violence. He says, I don't plan to give up my right to protect myself, my family, or my property because a purple-haired Prius pilot doesn't feel comfortable with my right. I couldn't agree more, Richie. That's part of the problem. The same people who feel uncomfortable are the same ones that want to have you all stripped of those rights because they believe that Uncle Sugar should take care of everybody. Right? That's 100%. But I think it's already been proven again that people, when they reach a certain level, are just not going to comply. They're just not going to do it. Again, the two statistics, the SAFE Act and the New York and the Connecticut assault weapons ban, both of them. Just basically, the New York one was like 4% compliance. And even the Connecticut one was 11 or something like that. It was just barely breaking into double digits. That means that 80+% of the people in both states said, no, I'm sorry. I'm not interested in participating in your madness. And I think if they attempted to do something like that, that would be problematic. I just don't think people will take it. I mean, it's that old saying, right? The old axiom that when guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. And that means, the caveat to that is because there will be millions of law-abiding citizens who will literally become outlaws overnight because they just refuse to participate in that kind of madness. Again, 400 to 750 million guns, 24 million of just ARs, and there's only 650,000 law enforcement in the country. And again, even if you say, well, we'll mobilize the Army and the National Guard, that's not even 1 million people, okay? But even if it was, let's just say it's 1 million point, let's say it's 1 point, let's round it up, 2 million people are going to disarm, hundreds of millions of law-abiding citizens who've done nothing wrong because of the actions of 0.00004% of the gun owners in the country. Those numbers just don't work, folks. They just do not work. The danger is that we all get complacent and we just acquiesce. That's where the danger comes in. That's when things can happen. We see time and again, says Richie, following up on his previous comment, we see time and again how many people are left to fend for themselves in violent situations where the people that are sworn and paid to protect them either don't show up or don't show up in a timely manner. Anyone willing to continue betting on Big Daddy to save them is a fool. Uncle Sugar. Because again, the courts have already said they do not have a duty to protect you individually. They're the cleanup crew. They're there after the fact. They can't be held liable if they don't protect you. I mean, a cop could literally be, down the street half a block away, and he still does not have a duty to protect you in a legally binding sense. I mean, this is not right. This is how it works. Anyway, all right. My phone just buzzed. Willie is now locked in. We're ready to go. We're going to jump over to it. Please like and share. Please ring the bell. Share the show with your friends. Let's get more people involved in this conversation. But let's lighten it up right now. We're going to talk about wrestling and other stuff. Willie Waffle, our guest. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Oh, yeah. You know what it's about. It's about time to take a little time off and go enjoy some weekend activities. How about going to the movies or watching something on the streams? Well, Willie Waffle comes in every week to give us the lowdown. I've got friends in lowdown places. Willie Waffle is one of them. Hello, my friend.
Hey, how you doing? I'm just excited because fall is here. The weather is turning. And there's football everywhere. It's amazing.
Shut up. I'm in Alaska, man. I don't need the winter. I don't need the winter here. I'm just praying it doesn't snow, barely before Halloween at this point. Anyway,
hey, when I was growing up, let me tell you, I'm from upstate New York. There were times when I was a child where I had to wear a winter coat on Halloween night to go out and trick-or-treating because there was some snow.
My kids came down from Fairbanks to Wasilla 10 years ago, and so a lot of them were still in their mid-teens, and they were all amazed because it was the first time ever they'd seen a Halloween where it wasn't 10 degrees or 20 below. They could actually wear their costumes outside their coats, so it was one of those things. All right, well, let's get into it, and we'll get. I guess it is the fall, which means Christmas is right around the corner, and I guess that means Christmas specials. What's happening here?
Oh yeah, we're going to be inundated with Christmas specials this year, man. They're already starting the announcements, and here's one of the first ones. I'm not excited, but I feel it is my duty to report this to you people, so you know what's coming, so you know how to avoid it, so you know how to find it if for some reason you're really interested in this. But it is going to be a nonsense Christmas with Sabrina Carpenter. Yes, the Pop Tartlet is doing a Christmas special. It's going to be on Netflix December 6th, and I know this is going to shock you. There are going to be songs from her new holiday album.
Okay, great.
And she's going to do some classic holiday songs, and she's going to have guest stars, and there's going to be some sort of comedy according to them. But what really got me, what really made me go, "Oh, you're so full of yourself." The quote in the release, in the press release, was that she's going to put her spin on variety specials. Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, that
we
makes...
haven't seen a variety special until Sabrina Carpenter's been
exactly.
involved.
I had to laugh because I didn't even know who Sabrina Carpenter was. When you sent me this, I'm like, I had to Google, who the heck is Sabrina Carpenter? She apparently is a Disney girl. She was on the Disney Channel and did stuff and blah. But again, I don't even know. I mean, I work in radio, and I didn't even know who she was.
And now, I mean, I think you can make an argument she is one of the top 3 or 4 pop stars in the world right now.
Yeah.
She was opening act for Taylor Swift's Eras tour, and she's kind of a big deal.
Okay, all right. Well, now she's got a Christmas special, so I mean, everybody's got to have one, right?
Yeah, except I don't have one.
Yeah,
you don't have one.
I know exactly. Well, yeah, nobody wants to hear me sing. All right,
but we could do the ultimate Alaska Christmas special.
Oh,
this is what you do at Christmas time in Alaska.
First, you dig yourself out. You dig yourself out.
I'm imagining a lot of really good food. Yeah. I'm imagining video games.
Oh yeah.
I'm imagining some moose in the background.
Oh yeah.
I think this could work.
Yeah.
I'm calling Netflix, man, and Netflix will turn me down, but maybe Peacock will take it.
Yeah, maybe Peacock.
They'll
well, Peacock,
anything.
they'll like say, yeah, I was just going to say they'll do anything. The franchise that just won't die is Friends. I mean, not that they're trying to reboot it or anything, but they're coming up with something new, and now it's a game show. What? They're making a game show? The show about, Friends doing nothing is now a game show? What's going on?
Well, this is the 30th anniversary of Friends debuting on NBC. And, there are a lot of things that are going on to kind of milk that. They're on, I think it's on Max. All the reruns are on Max, and they have special themes going on for the 30th anniversary. But the biggest thing that's going on is kind of this melding of a game show that will be on the Max streaming service. It will air 4 episodes. It's going to be Friends trivia. And the thing that's really interesting is they're going to do it on this display that's in New York right now. And it's replicas of the Friends set, and they've got costumes, and they've got, pieces from the background on the set. And they're going to do the trivia show right there. It's called Fast Friends. And they'll record the whole thing right there at the exhibit in New York City. It'll be on in the fall. 4 episodes of all the Friends trivia you never thought you needed.
Okay. I mean, good. I mean, look, I know it's got a huge following. I know it does. So, I mean, this is, I guess this is good for people who loved Friends. This will be a fun thing. And you could play along at home and yell at the TV. And if, maybe you can get the answers that nobody else can. So it'll be good. When's this coming out?
Yeah, they don't have a specific date yet, but we're looking fall.
Okay.
So in the next couple of months.
Okay. And finally, I'm sure you're ecstatic about this. Ryan Seacrest.
I was ready.
Is
I was
winning.
ready to talk about this.
Yeah, Ryan Seacrest is winning, as Charlie Sheen used to say, winning the Wheel of Fortune. What's going on?
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I mean, the ratings are finally in for Ryan Seacrest's first week, and the first show was going to be really highly rated. There were going to be a lot of people who'd be curious and tuning in, and that's exactly what you got. The premiere episode drew 9.6 million viewers. That is the biggest Wheel season premiere since 2015, and it's not that far off from Pat Sajak's last episode, which was 11 million a couple months ago. But what really has surprised me is that they're kind of holding up on the ratings. The rest of the week averaged about 8 million, a little bit over 8, like 8.25 million viewers, which is up 21% over the first week of September 2023. Dare I say, Ryan Seacrest has reinvigorated Wheel of Fortune in ways that none of us could have imagined.
A whole new
None
generation.
of us thought was going to happen.
A whole
Yeah.
new generation is now exposed to the wheel. I think it's probably been 40 years since I watched an episode of Wheel of Fortune. Probably 40 years since I was probably 16, 17 years old the last time I watched one. So anyway, not that I'm going to watch it with Ryan Seacrest because, I remember Chuck Woolery. He was my favorite. Chuck Woolery was my favorite. But what
he was the guy who really started it.
Yeah. He was the guy that really got it done. All right, let's move over to the streams and to the theaters. We got 3 things: The Wild Robot, Wolves, and Mr. I know this is the one you're excited about, Mr. McMahon. Where are we going to start?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, let's start with the Netflix documentary. This is it's a 6-episode series about Vince McMahon and the WWE and kind of the rise of Vince McMahon, how he made the company what it was, and now is in the midst of the grand fall from grace. And the thing that really hurts the documentary, and it's not their fault, they started filming this and started putting this together a few years ago, before all the really big scandals hit. And they remind you of that at the beginning of every episode, because people are saying things about Vince McMahon that they wouldn't say now if they knew what they if they
right.
Like, they interviewed him now, they wouldn't say those nice things.
Well,
okay?
and fill us in, because for those of us who aren't following what's going on with the World Wrestling, what exactly, what are some of these? I know there's been a few, but I can't recall it. What are some of the big things that have come out that you're like, gasp, I can't believe this is happening?
Sure. Well, over the past couple of years, Vince McMahon stepped away and came back to WWE. So I want to say it was early 2023, it was revealed that he had settled numerous lawsuits with numerous women about, allegations regarding sexual harassment and treatment and such. And he stepped away from the company. Then, because he was still the primary shareholder, he decided to come back to the company and decided to orchestrate the sale of WWE to the same company that owns UFC. And so they made that sale. So now he was a member of the board of now this big company. I forget what the name of it is, but basically they own UFC and they own WWE. And then it came out there is a former employee who is suing him now, who is alleging that he participated in just unimaginable, horrific sexual acts with her, trafficked her to other wrestlers and to other executives.
Oh, geez.
And has done horrifying things.
Okay, so this,
and he was he was back out after that. But the thing that's going on right now is the FBI is involved.
Okay, all right.
The FBI is investigating criminal activity.
Okay, all right. So this whole thing got started. This docuseries actually started filming well before any of this came out, which ought to make for an interesting perspective.
Yeah. And they throw in some of the other things that have happened over the years, and that's the thing about the documentary. I feel like if you're a really hardcore WWE fan, a lot of these stories. You know both the good stories and the negative stories that are coming out. The steroid scandal. There was a scandal with the what they call the ring boys, the guys that would put the rings together and were harassed by some of the WWE executives. You have allegations of Vince McMahon with inappropriate relationships pretty much from the mid 80s on. So you see a lot of that, but you also see a lot of how he built the business and how, to his credit as a businessman, took what was a small little family run company and made it into a multi-billion-dollar corporation that dominates entertainment and dominates what we think of as professional wrestling.
Okay.
And so you see kind of that parallel of what's going on, this amazing business transformation, but also who is this guy behind the scenes?
Right.
So I'm at like 2.5 waffles because I know a lot of these stories. Like I wanted something new. I wanted something different. And probably the closest thing we get to new is there's a lot where they talk about his relationship with his family, with his son and his daughter, and this weird kind of power triangle that goes on as each one of them wants to be the successor to Vince and how he plays with it and uses them on the air. And that was kind of interesting.
Okay. So great businessman, horrible human being, 2.5
Yeah.
waffles. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on over to one of the other ones. Which one do you want to do?
Let's go with Wolves first. And this is on Apple TV Plus. Now, it was in theaters a little bit last week, but that was just to promote the fact that you're going to watch it on Apple TV Plus. And it's these two professional fixers, George Clooney and Brad Pitt. And, each one is called in by another party when this kind of salacious thing happens. A district attorney played by Amy Ryan has this young man in her hotel room, and it appears he's died. And she calls George Clooney in to clean it up and cover it up. And wouldn't you know, the hotel knew about it because they had a secret camera in the room. And they called Brad Pitt to come in and clean it up. So now Clooney and Pitt, who are rivals, have to try to work together. And the thing that makes this work is just Brad Pitt and George Clooney are awesome together. And we've seen that before, right? We've seen them in the Ocean's movies. We know how they're the coolest guys in the room. We know that they have that great banter back and forth. They're great when they're insulting each other and making fun of each other in this movie. Each one trying to prove how much they know about the business and trying to teach their little tricks to the other one. I mean, there's a lot of entertainment there. I just think that a lot of the major characters kind of come and go a little too easily in the movie. I think the same thing happens with a lot of the plots. But I'm at 3 waffles. I think it's entertaining.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I thought you were going to give it much lower than that. So 3 waffles for Wolves, and it's only on Apple TV Plus, which means I'll never see it. But, there you go. And finally, The Wild Robot in theaters right now.
A really nice movie that I think gets a little too dark at times. So you've got this robot played by Lupita Nyong'o. It's an animated film, and she's the voice. This robot is shipwrecked on a desert island, and it's really kind of like a customer service robot. It's there to help you. It's there to finish the task that you asked to help it with. So as it's going around the island, it's scaring all the other animals to death. They don't want to have anything to do with this. But through an unfortunate incident, there's a little baby gosling that the robot has to kind of take under his wing and needs to raise the gosling and become a motherly figure, and suddenly gets ingratiated with the rest of the island and the rest of the animals on the island. And so you have kind of that nice little motherhood story going on, that feel-good story going on. But I think like towards the end, they start to introduce a little bit more danger because this is a robot. It's owned by a corporation.
Right.
They're gonna want it back, and so I think that's where it gets a little bit too much. But I'm at 3 waffles. I mean, I really liked Lupita Nyong'o. I thought she did a wonderful job, kind of evolving the computer's voice, making it more motherly as it learns these traits and becomes more of a mother to the little baby gosling. You got Pedro Pascal, who's hilarious as the sly fox,
right?
As he's kind of doing the fox thing, and Catherine O'Hara, a possum mom,
who man,
bonds with the robot because. Moms got to talk to moms
all right
to each other, man.
3 waffles for the Wild Robot, Willie Waffle. We're out of time, folks. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great day. So you're saying, I mean, this is a movie that's meant obviously for kids, but it just gets a little too dark for kids at some point, and not violence,
so.
just kind of scary, or just kind of heavy.
A little scary and a little heavy. I don't. There's how do I put it? How the robot meets with the baby gosling is not fairy tale like in a positive way.
Okay.
And I don't know how else to put it without giving it away.
Right.
Am I allowed to give it away?
You killed my father. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a little heavy. The danger that the robot is in as the evil company comes to take it. It could be a little bit too much, I think, for little kids. But it's a decent movie. I mean, you got older kids who understand that it's a movie. I think they're going to be just fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is based on a book, right? Like a young teens, like a young adult's book, young teen book.
I think they did 2 or 3 of them too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll watch that. Anything else? What are you looking forward to next week?
Well, next week's the big Joker movie, Joker 2.
Yeah.
The Folie à Deux.
That's for Phoenix, Joaquin Phoenix, right? Coming back as the Joker.
Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn. Look out!
Oh Lord,
that could be cool. The only thing I'm worried about, that they've made it very clear. In a lot of ways, it's a musical. Like it's supposed to be supposed to be us looking into their demented minds as they play out the events in front of them as some big musical. And I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know.
Oh Lord. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see what that looks like. Until then, we're just going to keep at it. What am I watching on the streams? I told you I'm watching Stargate SG-1, right? Because I'd never watched that.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm about
that was a good show.
Yeah, so I'm about halfway through all the seasons, and it's just a really, kind of good popcorn, kind of enjoyable unwind. And we're still in Only Murders in the Building, and we haven't started season 2 yet. We watched season 1 and we were like, I need to take a break. But we're going to come back to it. So there's a few good things out there to be looking out for and be watching.
I think so.
Oh, you know what I watched the other day?
What?
Excuse me. Coughing there. I finally got to it. It was on my watch list, and I was just like, I'm feeling like an action movie. We watched Overlord, J.J. Abrams' Overlord, which is the story of the invasion of France during World War II, only with zombies. I got to tell you.
Oh, God, that's right.
Oh, that is
I had forgotten about that.
That was such a fun movie. Holy cow, that was a fun movie. And I really enjoyed it. For me, that was like a 3.5 waffle movie. I was just like, that was just a wild ride from start to finish. I really enjoyed it. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's really well done cinematically. And it's got a cool story. If you like World War II, that's got some cool stories. If you hate Nazis, it's a cool story. It's
any place where you can kill Nazis.
Any place where you can blow Nazis up and burn them with a flamethrower. I'm all about that. It's called Overlord, which for those of you who don't know is ironic because the D-Day invasion, it was Operation Overlord is what it was called. So that's the inside joke on the movie, but very, very good. A lot of fun, and people should go out and watch that in droves because it was a great time. All right. Well, Willie, that's it, my friend. I will let you get back to the rest of your weekend. Although
you got it.
Being on call is the pits, right?
It
is.
It's a whole thing.
I didn't want to rub it in.
Yeah.
All right, my friend.
Don't. Yeah.
Thanks. We'll see you next week, sir. Have a great weekend. All right, folks. That's it.
Next weekend.
That's it for us. We will see you on Monday. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.